Alright, what's up guys, it's McKinley Crain here. Today I'm going to be doing my spoiler-free review of one of the most recent MCU Disney Plus original Marvel series. And I'm going to be reviewing the whole season 1 of this show. And this show is Loki. So for those of you who don't know, Loki is a 2021 MCU Disney Plus original show. And it consists of 6 episodes, and it's not a mini-series, by the way. There's going to be a season 2. I also thought that this was going to be a mini-series just because WandaVision and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier were mini-series, which means that they only lasted 1 season, and then they ended. They were only supposed to last 1 season. But unlike those shows, this show is not a miniseries, and it's supposed to have another season and like multiple seasons, I think. And I know for a fact that the Marvel What If show that's coming out soon is definitely not going to be a miniseries, because why would it? Like, you can make that concept last for seasons and seasons, like for years, and still have new ideas. Anyway, so this series stars Tom Hiddleston as Loki, who in this series, in this season of this series, basically kind of disrupts the timeline. And by the way, this takes place in the year 2012, and Loki kind of accidentally disrupts the timeline and is apprehended by the TVA. The TVA are, like, the time police. Like, they're supposed to, monitor the flow of time and prevent any, major catastrophic events that could disrupt the timeline from happening. So yeah, basically Loki gets captured, and then they interrogate him, and they're just like, "You're a variant, so you have to help us catch another variant." And then that variant turns out to be Sylvie, who's an alternate version of Loki. And this is not a spoiler, by the way. Everybody knows that. That's even been revealed in trailers for the show that have been put out by Disney. So yeah, that's not a spoiler anymore, of course. Basically, Sylvie tells Loki, the TVA is fooling you. They're not who they think they are. We need to find out who's behind the TVA. And along doing so, they encounter a whole bunch of other alternate versions of Lokis from their own other universes. Yes, in case you're wondering, yes, this show did technically, I guess it didn't technically introduce the multiverse into the MCU, but it kind of actually, in my opinion, made it an MCU thing. Like, it actually made it a huge part of its story. So yeah, the multiverse is like a big part of Loki season 1 story, and just the show Loki story, like the show in general story. And it's great. It works. I love this show. This show was perfect. The season was perfect. I love the season. The season was perfect. It's really fun. The season was really fun, and I loved what they did with the character Loki. I love what they did with his character, and I love how they expanded on his personality, further expanded on his personality and his motivations, and just a lot of just who like who he is, if you know what I mean. Love how they expanded on that, on his character in this show. And I love how they brought in new characters in this show and alternate versions of Loki. I thought that they were all very well played characters, and I thought that they were all very clever alternate versions of Loki, and very complex versions of Loki. Well, not all of them were complex, but the ones that weren't complex were intentionally non-complex. Like, there's one Loki there's one alternate version of a Loki that's just like an alligator. Like, so in that universe, it's just all animals or whatever. Like, his only personality is that he's an alligator Loki. He's Loki who's an alligator, and there's nothing wrong with that. That was actually a very clever gag. And speaking of like humor, the comedy and humor in the show, even though this is an action show, it's a comedy action show, which means that it's an action show overall, but it's got quite a lot of comedy in it, and the comedy that is in it is fantastic and very cleverly written, and the cast only makes the comedy better, especially Tom Hiddleston. His character Loki, brought the best humor in this show, in my opinion. All the humor in the show is perfect, but my favorite humor, my favorite jokes were usually related to that character or from that character. Anyway, and I love the story of this show and of this season. I love this season's story. I thought it was a fascinating story. It's one of the most fascinating stories that we've had in the MCU. And we've had some pretty fascinating, stories and concepts. Like, WandaVisions was extremely fascinating, and, just every Marvel movie has a fascinating concept, in my opinion. Every MCU movie has had a fascinating concept so far. But this is, every MCU project. But, in my opinion, this show is has one of the most entertaining and interesting concepts in the MCU. And, it's one of the best, projects in the MCU, and, what's the word I'm looking for? Installments, is that? Installments in the MCU? Yeah, I think that's it. That's the word I'm looking for, or at least it's pretty similar to the word I was looking for. Anyway, and I love the action in the show. It's perfect. It's great. I love the visuals in this show. They're very beautiful to look at and very well designed. Like, the backgrounds and the settings in this show, they're just also colorful. And I love, the color pattern that the show uses. It works very well, and it's eye candy. And I loved all of the villains in this show, which I can't really disclose who those villains are, because this is spoiler-free review, and that stuff is related to spoilers in the show, so I can't really disclose who those villains are, but I can tell you that they are perfect. Especially the surprise villain in the last episode. Anyway, and there's a lot of great chemistry in this show, especially between Loki and Sylvie. Their characters had the best chemistry in the show, although every character in this show had great chemistry, every example of character chemistry in this show and in the season was perfect. And in second place for like best character chemistry in this season or in the show overall, I would have to put the character chemistry between Loki and Mobius. Just saying that. But even though that character chemistry was perfect, it wasn't as perfect as the character chemistry between Loki and Sylvie. That was just the best example of character chemistry from this season and from the show. Anyway, and I loved how the show ended. I loved the cliffhanger ending. Did I say ending right? I think I did. And I can't wait for season 2. Anyway, I'm going to give this season a 100% out of 100%, which is the equivalent of an A+. Like, subscribe, join the notification squad. I will return.